Hello and welcome back to the Sam Beast YouTube channel. My name is David.foxen and today we're going to be discussing hardware asset depreciation. What exactly is IT asset depreciation and how do I depreciate my assets and why should ITAM even care about depreciation values? Hey, that's a great question. Thank you so much for asking and well, thank goodness you asked, otherwise I would not have this video to make. So recently we posted a video about the Asset Management Database, or the AMDB, highlighting key data sets required to manage desktops and laptops. Thank you very much for the support on that video, by the way. It's very much appreciated. Anyway, we missed out two key data sets that we require for all IT asset types. That is depreciation value and depreciation method. So what exactly does depreciation mean? Depreciation is how fast your assets lose money and ultimately how much they are worth during a defined period of time, depending on the depreciation method that you use. So what are those depreciation methods within ITAM? There are two pretty common ones out there and there's one quite niche one for you to review as well. The first common method of hardware assets depreciation is called the straight line depreciation. Now, this is quite frankly the most common used depreciation model for our wonderful physical IT assets, and it's really easy to set up and define within your asset management database or your ITSM platform, or even in the most used ITAM technology tool in the world, Excel. Straight line depreciation basically takes that purchase cost of the hardware asset and divides that over the period of months that you deem the asset to be within its useful life cycle within your organization. The depreciated amount is the same every month until it reaches the final month when the remaining value ends up being a sad, fat zero. Like I said before, straight line depreciation is really easy to calculate and can be done in even Excel if you don't have an ITSM tool or an asset management database tool. Just take that purchase cost and divide it by the number of months you wish to depreciate the asset over. You can then see how much each month that asset is declining in value. This is really useful for when you're writing off missing, stolen, or even assets that cannot be repaired, and it's really useful when looking at your hardware asset refresh process. Some ITAM teams can also claim the remaining depreciated values against their cost avoidance targets for the year if they have been proactive, obviously, and conducted a bring out your dead or an internal hardware audit. Now, obviously, if that asset has reached the end of its useful life within your organization, there's no avoidances to claim. It's been fully depreciated. It is worth zero. Now, it is also not uncommon for your fixed asset register teams or even finance to check your depreciated values that you have in your asset management database against theirs as part of their own verification and internal audits. Next on the list for a common depreciation method is the declining balance depreciation method. Again, this is really easy to configure in your asset management database and your ITSM tooling. So instead of a straight line depreciation with the same amount coming out every month, it kind of takes a similar approach to how cars are depreciated. Basically, this is related to a bigger drop in value in the first year or 18 months before the depreciation declines and kind of tails out, losing less value as the last few years of the asset's life. Now, typically, I've seen clients use this mainly for really expensive servers or network equipment. These are obviously an expensive outlay initially. They have a quick decline in value and then kind of tail out as the life cycle is actually a longer period of time compared to the laptops and desktops, mobile phones, etc. Now, that's not to say that you must absolutely use this method for your servers and network equipment or anything really expensive. It is honestly up to your organization on whether you use this over the straight line method. It all depends on what your ITAM strategy looks like, what your fixed asset register teams are saying, what your finance teams are saying, and how they're currently depreciating your high value physical IT assets. Now, from an ITAM perspective, if you are being proactive and claiming those avoidances on unused server or network equipment or whatever else you're using the declining balance depreciation method for, then you're going to have the kind of biggest hit in the first year. But then ultimately after that, the avoidances are going to be very, very similar as it starts to tail out and the depreciation declines in speed, if you like, and, there's less money going off of the asset. If you're using IT asset disposition companies or, generally reselling the assets, then again, you won't see much of a decline in the residual value of that asset in its later years because it has had the decline in balance depreciation method. This is, again, really useful if you are doing ITAD and showing the benefits of ITAD within your ITAM organization. It's to show that, we have used this asset throughout its life cycle. We have depreciated it using the declining balance depreciation. And actually, the remaining resale value or the rebate that we'll get back from our ITAD company is very similar to what our depreciated value is based on our useful life and the decline in balance method. There is another method of depreciation that you can use within ITAM, and that's called the per action depreciation. Now, I've used this for clients quite sparingly, and it's been for niche hardware assets within like the manufacturing or engineering world, or assets that have a lifespan of a certain number of actions. For example, one of the niche assets that we used for this was actually a hydraulics machine that had a single purpose of stamping certain materials for a product that they are producing. Now, this asset was on the network so that we could get an inventory from it, and the asset had a lifespan of, I think it was about 100,000 actions before it needed to be completely replaced or parts replaced. Therefore, the depreciation was based on the number of actions rather than a specific time period. Fortunately, it had its own software as well, which showed the number of actions it had actually gone through on a weekly basis. So we could use that within the AMDB to establish the remaining number of actions available before the end of life and therefore the remaining depreciation value. I hope you're still with me. Now, this is by far my favourite method of depreciation. It's quite manual and quite a pain to establish and ascertain, how many actions have gone through, what does that mean in terms of depreciation, how much value is left in the asset. But I thought I would mention it anyway, and this is one again that it's quite hard to actually manage within your AMDB and your ITSM tool, and actually it's probably quite easy to manage within Excel because you can do formulas and stuff like that using the data from the software associated to your niche asset if you're lucky enough to have it. So yeah, not my most favorite one. Hopefully you won't have to use this depreciation method because it is a pain, but I thought I'd make you aware of it so that, if you are having to use it, you've got a bit of context and background around that one. So in summary then, what is the actual point in hardware asset depreciation and why should ITAM be doing it? Well, as we've mentioned throughout this video, the first point is that the fact that it defines the remaining value of your physical assets. Now, this can be really helpful when you are doing the potential hardware savings or avoidances that your ITAM team have been set by the director or by finance. It also helps ITAM track assets that are potentially due for that hardware refresh. If an asset's got 20 quid, $20 left worth on it, it may and it should be already being planned to be refreshed for a newer model, because you may start to encounter things like patching difficulties, software that won't run as smoothly on it as it did before. There's all sorts of reasons as to why you should be on top of your hardware refresh process. But looking at the depreciated values is another really good indicator of now might be the time to get a new laptop. Next up, it also defines whether the asset is actually economically repairable or if it should follow the IT asset disposition or even a disposal process. So if the asset is actually only worth, a couple of pounds or a couple of dollars, and it's going to cost you $150 to actually go and repair it, not worth it. The repairs are worth more than the asset itself. It's probably highly likely that it's a better option for you to look at and see whatever else is in stock so that you can re-provision that. Or, again, go back to that hardware refresh process and get your user with a new device. Same concept for servers and network equipment. If the repairs cost more than the asset is actually worth, it's probably worth replacing it or finding an asset in stock that you can provision instead. I hate to keep going back to the car depreciation example, but I will. You wouldn't spend $500 or £500 worth of repairs on a car that's worth £200. It's not economically viable or worthwhile doing, and it's the same with your physical IT assets. And finally as well, these depreciation values can support your finance and fixed assets teams. You know, they may be depreciating the assets themselves already, but they may come to you for a reference point or to ask to see what your remaining depreciation value is for all of your laptops, your desktops, or your servers, whatever it may be. And, you know, it's really not uncommon for the fixed asset team to send a monthly report to ITAM to say, look, this is what we've got left for depreciation values for all of these assets. Can you let us know what the AMDB is saying as well? Just further kind of expand ITAM out into a new stakeholder as well, where you can add value and show the benefits that ITAM can bring. So if you are questioned about the depreciation values from other teams, please, you know, help them, provide them the information, because it could be opening doors, and it could also help educate them on the benefits and the awesomeness that is IT asset management and hardware asset management. So there you have it. That is the hardware depreciation. We have mentioned now the depreciation method and the depreciation value, the two missing fields in our laptops and desktops AMDB video. Really hope you found it useful. If I've missed anything at all on hardware asset depreciation, please nicely let me know in the comments and on LinkedIn, and we can now crack on with our AMDB data series. So I shall see you on the next one. Enjoy the rest of your day, and yeah, hope you enjoyed it.